At exactly 5:03 a.m., I opened my eyes, no alarm, no noise, just something deep inside me that had learned, over 20 years of marriage, to wake before anyone else. But this morning felt different, colder, heavier. I lay there in silence, staring at the faint ceiling lines etched by moonlight filtering through the curtains. Eric was snoring softly beside me, the faint smell of whiskey still lingering on his breath. It was my 40th birthday, and I wasn't sure if I felt anything at all. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and pulled on the silk robe he gave me last Christmas, the one he said made me look more like a CEO's wife. I remembered how proud I was then, still believing that I meant something. I padded into the kitchen and flipped on the recessed lights. Everything gleamed: marble countertops, chrome fixtures, a room that looked more like a catalog than a home. I turned on the coffee machine and stood there as it hissed to life, watching the dark liquid drip into the carafe like it had purpose. At least something did. I had already planned tonight's dinner a week ago. A full menu, from rosemary lamb to a chocolate raspberry cake from the best bakery in Boston. I'd prepped the guest list, arranged the wine pairings, and even chosen the floral centerpieces. Not because Eric asked, because I needed something to hold on to, something to prove I still had control. As I reached for my planner on the counter, Eric's phone lit up next to it. A new message. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I already knew what I would find. The preview read, "Sunshine, can't wait to see you tonight. 12 o'clock. Same hotel. It's gonna be wild. K." My hands froze. My breath caught. And all I could hear was the hum of the fridge behind me, louder than my heartbeat. He hadn't objected when I suggested a birthday dinner at home. Now I knew why. He had his own celebration planned. I sat down at the kitchen island, clutching the edge of the marble like it might anchor me. But nothing held. There were no tears. Not yet. Just this numbing, familiar ache, like realizing, again, that my life had drifted so far off course I couldn't remember where it began. I had a red diploma in economics once. I helped Eric build his company from a one-man renovation gig into one of Boston's top development firms. But you wouldn't know it. Not from the outside. Not even from the inside. To them, I was just Elaine, the wife who made perfect espresso and wore silk robes. I looked up at the wall clock. Still early. I stood and opened the fridge, pulling out the marinating lamb, fresh herbs, and the cake box tied with burgundy ribbon. The cake looked beautiful, almost enough to distract me from the fact that I felt completely hollow inside. Eric would probably roll his eyes again and call it a waste of money. He could drop $2,000 on a bottle of single malt for a client, but a birthday cake? Too extravagant. The lights on the stove cast a faint glow on the floor tiles. I moved with practiced ease, chopping, seasoning, arranging ingredients in neat rows. For a moment, I almost forgot what I saw. Almost. Until the bedroom door creaked and his voice, still laced with sleep, called out, "Smells good already. Maybe we should have hired a caterer." Huh. He walked in, adjusting his Rolex, flipping through emails on his phone. I smiled faintly. "I like cooking. You know that." He grunted. Sure. By the way, I invited a couple more tonight. Mike from the Sweden Project and Andrew Lawson. You remember him?" My hands paused over the cutting board. Of course I remembered. Andrew Lawson, my old classmate, the one who once scribbled Keynesian theories in the margins of my textbooks and brought me daisies during finals week. I hadn't seen him in over a decade. I turned back to the counter. No, doesn't ring a bell. Come on. Tall guy, eco startup something. We'll see if he's cooking up anything useful. I nodded absently, chopping parsley with a little more force than necessary. My husband had no idea what kind of storm he was inviting into our house, or what it would do to me. By noon, the apartment was spotless. Every candle trimmed, every plate polished, every champagne flute arranged on the white linen runner, like soldiers in formation. I'd even iron the napkins, something no one would notice, but I did it anyway. Because order gave me comfort. Because perfection was the only armor I had left. I glanced at the clock again. Guests would start arriving by 6. I still had time for the salon. My appointment was at 2. But before that, I walked into my closet and pulled out the deep sapphire blue dress. The one Eric had rolled his eyes at during the wedding 3 years ago, mumbling, "You're not 20 anymore." I held it up now, defiant. It had a low neckline and bare my shoulders. It fit like it used to. And today, I didn't care what he thought. I slipped it into a garment bag and grabbed my shoes. As I turned, I caught the old leather-bound notebook on my dresser. My journal, not for secrets or feelings, but for business notes. Analytics, client summaries, cost projections. All the things Eric didn't have time for, but that someone had to track. I flipped to the last page, picked up a pen, and wrote 40. Eric is with Krista or Kayla or whoever this week. Ethan's in Chicago, far from this house and the ghost I've become. His mother is coming tonight, which means criticism in a pearl necklace. But me? Tonight, I'll wear that damn dress. No more hiding. 40 is not the end. It's the start. At exactly 2 p.m., I sat under the soft light of the salon mirror while a stylist arranged my chestnut hair into a loose, elegant updo. Light makeup, rose-tinted lips, silver drop earrings, gifted by my parents long ago, completed the look. I hardly recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I looked awake. At 5:55, Monica arrived with a burst of cinnamon-scented air and a giant bouquet of white lilies. She took one look at me and let out a low whistle. "Elaine Harper, look at you. That man's gonna pass out when he sees you." I smiled. "Think he'll notice?" "If he doesn't, he's blind. Or stupid. Probably both." She handed me a small, velvet-wrapped parcel. "Open it when you're alone." I tucked it into my bedroom drawer without asking. With Monica, there was always intention behind the mystery. Champagne chilled in the buckets. The lamb rested in the oven. My heart was oddly calm. At 6:35, the first knock came. Margaret Harper, my mother-in-law, swept in wearing a cream suit and hair lacquered into place. "Elaine," she said, eyes flicking to my bare shoulders. "A bit much, don't you think? At your age." I bit my tongue and smiled. Just for today. She brought Peking duck, Eric's favorite. Of course, Professor Walter, Eric's father, followed quietly behind, offering a kind hug and a soft, "Happy birthday, my dear. You look wonderful." I clung to that compliment like a lifeline. More guests arrived, colleagues, old family friends, spouses I barely remembered. I poured drinks, passed hors d'oeuvres, laughed when expected. It was my party after all. I played my part. It wasn't until nearly 8 that Eric arrived. He burst through the door, all charm and cologne and tailored wool. "Sorry, meetings ran over," he announced, kissing his mother's hand and scanning the room. Then his gaze landed on me. He blinked once, twice, like he wasn't sure who I was. "Wow," he said, crossing the room. "Trying to outshine everyone tonight, aren't you?" He wrapped an arm around my waist. I stiffened. "Careful with the champagne, darling. You'll need a steady hand for the cake." He laughed, and the guests laughed with him, some nervously, some too polite to question it. Monica just raised one perfectly arched brow and sipped her wine. Then the doorbell rang again. Eric glanced at the clock. "That'll be Andrew." I walked to the door, heels echoing on the hardwood floor, and opened it to find a tall man with salt at his temples, clean glasses, and a quiet bouquet of white roses. He smiled, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. "Happy birthday, Elaine. You haven't changed a bit." It was Andrew Lawson, but not the one from my faded college memories. Gone were the messy curls and oversized hoodies. In their place stood a man with confident posture and eyes that still held that curious light I remembered. Only now it was steadier, deeper. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. You're just in time. He handed me the roses. White, your favorite, right? You once said they stood for new beginnings. I stared at them a second too long. You remembered. Some things are worth remembering. His fingers brushed mine for the briefest moment, warm and steady, and then he stepped inside. His presence was calm, quiet, like someone who knew exactly who he was and didn't need to prove it to anyone. I watched him move through the room, politely greeting guests, scanning the space with a kind of amused curiosity. Meanwhile, Eric was across the living room, slapping shoulders, telling loud stories, drawing attention like he always did. When he spotted Andrew, his grin widened. Lawson, man, how long has it been? Sweden treating you well. Andrew shook his hand firmly. Can't complain. Sustainable development is growing fast. All right, green energy, carbon offsets, all that feel-good stuff, Eric chuckled. You tree huggers always need investors, don't you? Andrew just smiled, calm and measured. Sustainability isn't just feel-good, it's the future. But I'm sure you're thriving too, Eric. Harper Developments is one of the top 10 now, isn't it? Eric puffed up, clearly pleased. All thanks to grit and good instincts. I stood nearby, arranging the white roses in a vase. My hands trembled slightly. 3 years ago, I drafted the plan that launched us into suburban markets while our competitors fought over urban real estate. I ran the numbers. I negotiated the supply deals. Eric laughed at it at first, until it worked. He never mentioned my name in the press release. Andrew caught my eye. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. There was something in his look, like he could see right through the practiced smile I wore like armor. The evening picked up momentum. Laughter grew louder. Wine glasses refilled themselves, and I moved between kitchen and living room like a hostess on autopilot. Then, over the noise, I heard Eric shout, Hey babe, where's that contract with East Shore? Want to show Mike our terms. I didn't hesitate. In the red folder in your office drawer. But remember clause 5.3 needs review. Vernon's legal team pushed back on the delivery timeline. A brief pause, a ripple in the noise. Eric frowned. What? No, that clause is fine. We agreed on that already. No, I said gently. They called 2 days ago, Eric waved a hand. Sorry, folks. My wife sometimes thinks she runs a law firm. His voice was loud, playful, but the undertone cut like glass. Sweetheart, you're great at canapes. Let's leave contract, law, to the grown-ups. A few guests chuckled uncomfortably. His mother nodded approvingly. She's always had a tendency to overstep, she said, sipping her wine. Women should focus on creating warmth in the home, not meddling in deals. I froze. My mouth was dry. My skin flushed hot with shame. Andrew's voice rose calmly across the room. In Sweden, over 40% of leadership positions are held by women. The results speak for themselves. Eric snorted. Yeah, well, that's Europe. Over here, we do things differently. A few of the men laughed. Others glanced away awkwardly. But my father-in-law, Walter, spoke up from the corner. Elaine graduated top of her class in economics. I remember. She even helped Eric pass statistics. He smiled warmly. You've always been sharp, dear. Dad, that was forever ago, Eric muttered. Books and theories are one thing. Real business is something else. I excused myself quietly and stepped into the kitchen. My hands moved on their own, reaching for the cake in the fridge. The chocolate raspberry glaze caught the light. I began to place the candles, 40 thin, elegant flames waiting to be lit. 40 years, a whole lifetime, and I wasn't even sure it had been mine. I had just finished placing the last candle when I heard a soft voice behind me. Need a hand? I turned to find Andrew leaning gently against the kitchen door frame. Sleeves rolled, no pretenses, just that calm presence again, grounding, steady. I forced a smile. No, I've got it. He nodded. I know. You always did. For a moment, I couldn't move. His words landed deeper than I expected. Not because they were flattering, but because they were true. I had always managed, even when everything inside me was cracking. Our eyes met across the marble island. In his, I didn't see pity. I saw clarity. And something else, something warm. I looked away before it could settle too long. Then Eric's ringtone broke the moment, his phone, left on the kitchen counter, buzzing against the granite. The screen lit up. A name appeared. Krista. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Just seeing her name confirmed what I already knew. Eric walked in a moment later, talking loudly, oblivious. When he saw the name flashing on the screen, he lunged for the phone, hit decline, and glanced at us both. "What's going on in here?" "Just prepping the cake," Andrew said, cool as ever. 40 candles. Impressive. "Yeah," Eric said, placing his hand on my shoulder, his grip just a little too tight. "And my wife handles it all so well. Doesn't she?" His tone was light, but there was an edge. He looked at Andrew, then at me. I didn't flinch. "Come on, Elaine," Eric added, voice lowering. "Let's not flirt with old classmates during your birthday, I stared at him. "It's my birthday, Eric." He blinked, caught off guard. But before he could respond, I picked up the cake plate and headed to the living room. Guests were waiting. I set the cake down, lit the candles, and stood still for a moment, watching the soft glow light up the silverware, the wine-stained glasses, the polite faces. Eric clinked his glass. "A toast to my wife. To Elaine, our lovely hostess, who cooks like a dream and keeps the house running like clockwork." Laughter. Glasses raised. He turned to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And who occasionally thinks she's a business consultant." That one stung more than I thought it would. My gaze scanned the room, searching for something, anything that felt real. And then I saw Andrew, raising his glass with quiet intent. "To Elaine," he said, "to her brilliance, and to all her talents, seen or unseen." There was a shift in the room, just a flicker, but I felt it. Some guests looked at me with new eyes. Others looked away. Something cracked open inside me. After the cake was cut and the noise returned to its usual hum, I slipped away again, retreating to the guest bathroom for air. When I emerged, I found Monica in the hallway, arms crossed, lips pressed in frustration. "He's a jackass," she muttered. "I know." She leaned in. "Did you open it?" "Not yet." "Now's the time." I walked to the bedroom, shut the door softly, and pulled out the velvet parcel from the drawer. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a brooch, a butterfly frozen in amber, its wings delicate and intricate, preserved in golden resin. I traced its edges with my fingertip. A butterfly in amber, beautiful, imprisoned, just like me. I fastened it to my dress, and for the first time in years, I looked at my reflection and didn't see a wife. I saw a woman trying to remember how to be herself again. Back in the living room, the energy had shifted, but only slightly. Laughter still echoed, but it felt thinner now, more rehearsed. I floated between conversations, refilling drinks, checking in on guests. My body moved automatically while my mind spiraled. The brooch on my dress felt heavy against my chest, like a quiet reminder. You're not invisible. Not anymore. Eric was in the center of it all, as usual. One hand gripping a glass of whiskey, the other gesturing wildly as he talked about the firm's next big project. "We're launching a new luxury complex on the waterfront," he boasted. "Came up with the whole thing myself. Open-plan penthouses, minimalist rooftop studios." I froze. That was my idea. I'd sketched it out on a napkin one night while he half listened. I had done the research, compared market trends, even pulled examples from European housing models. But now, as he told the story, I was just another smiling face holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. I ducked back into the kitchen, heart pounding, eyes stinging. A few moments later, Monica followed. "Let me help," she said, grabbing a stack of plates from the table. "I'm fine." She looked at me hard. "Are you?" I paused, then exhaled. What else can I do? You could stop pretending, she said. You could stop letting him treat you like the hired help. Elaine, I'm saying this as your friend and as a psychologist. This has gone on long enough. I glanced toward the doorway, lowering my voice. He'll hear you. Let him, she snapped. And while we're at it, did you even open your mouth when he called you a housewife who plays lawyer? In front of everyone. My silence answered her. Open your eyes, she said. You've been running that man's business behind the scenes for a decade. You negotiate contracts, manage costs, keep it alive, and still he talks to you like you're nothing. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking slightly. I didn't know if it was from anger, shame, or both. I can't just blow everything up. Why not? Because it's my son's home. Because I have no resume. No formal job history. Because I'm 40, Monica. Who's going to want me now? Monica's voice softened, but her eyes remained fierce. You are intelligent, experienced. You are the business. You think people like Andrew wouldn't see that? You think I didn't see how he looked at you tonight? I turned away, embarrassed. Don't start. I'm not saying anything scandalous. I'm saying maybe, just maybe, someone out there remembers who you were before you became Mrs. Harper. I felt tears press against my eyes. I swallowed them down. I don't even know who that person is anymore. You do, she said, placing a hand on my arm. She's just been asleep, but not dead. Before I could respond, Eric's voice boomed from the hallway. Elaine, you hiding again? We stepped out together. He was swaying slightly now, his glass nearly empty. His face was red from drink, his smile too wide. There you are, he said, walking over. You missed the part where I told the guys about your little contract correction. Big laugh. Glad I could entertain, I said flatly. He stepped closer, leaning in. You embarrassed me in front of Mikhailov. Keep that up, and we'll have a different kind of talk later. Something in me snapped. Quietly, cleanly. I looked him in the eye. Then maybe it's time we have that talk now. His smile faltered. He didn't see it yet, but I wasn't the woman he toasted anymore. I was the woman about to burn the script. The room quieted the moment I spoke. Not entirely, but enough. Eric blinked, trying to decipher my tone, whether I was still playing along or had finally stepped out of character. What talk? He asked, half laughing like I was joking. Now, come on, Elaine. Don't make a scene. I steadied my voice. I'm not making a scene. I'm speaking. He leaned in again, this time more menacing. Don't push me. Not tonight. It is tonight, I said louder now. Because I'm done pretending. Eric stiffened. Around us, the clinks of glass and idle chatter slowed to a hum. People sensed something had shifted. Monica moved closer, just within reach. Eric's smile returned, but it was forced plastic. I think you've had a bit too much wine. You don't mean whatever little tantrum this is. I tilted my head. Don't I? Because I've been meaning it for years. I've just never said it out loud. I turned toward the guests. For 10 years, I've helped build this man's company, negotiated contracts, handled finances, even wrote the pitch he used to land our first $1 million client. And yet tonight, in front of all of you, he called me a housewife who plays lawyer. Gasps. Awkward glances. Some people set down their drinks. Eric grabbed my arm. We're not doing this. Let's go now. I pulled away. No, I'm not going anywhere with you. He looked stunned, like I'd slapped him. You've cheated. You've elite. You've humiliated me more times than I can count. And I let it happen because I thought that's what a good wife does. But I'm not your doormat, Eric. Not anymore. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just that look of disbelief, the unraveling of control. And if you think you can throw tantrums, break things, raise your voice, and keep me scared, I shook my head. You've run out of tricks. I turned toward the bedroom. I'm leaving tonight. I'll pack my things, and I'll be gone before sunrise. You're being ridiculous, he barked. Where would you even go? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe. Somewhere where I don't have to apologize for being intelligent. Is this because of him? He growled, jerking his head toward Andrew, who'd stepped closer now, silent but unmoving. This is because of you, I replied, because I've spent the best years of my life shrinking for a man who couldn't bear to share the spotlight. Eric's face turned red, not from embarrassment, but from rage. You think you can survive out there without me? You think he cares about you? Andrew's voice finally cut in, low and firm. She doesn't need me to care for her, Eric. She just needed you not to tear her down. Eric lunged forward, but Monica stepped between them. That's enough. I didn't flinch. I walked back into the kitchen, picked up the keys from the drawer, and then turned back to him. I'm not asking for permission. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm reclaiming my life. And then I walked out the front door, past stunned faces and flickering candlelight, past the shattered version of myself I'd left behind, into the hallway, into the night, into something that, for the first time in years, felt like freedom. I didn't go far that night. Just a few blocks away, to Monica's apartment, the same warm space filled with mismatched cushions, books stacked like towers, and the familiar scent of coffee and cinnamon. The door was already open when I arrived. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me and said, "Welcome home." I stayed there for 3 days. 3 days of quiet. No raised voices. No walking on eggshells. No pretending. We drank tea, took walks through the park with leaves crunching beneath our boots, and talked for hours. Sometimes about serious things like finances and the divorce paperwork Monica had already printed out for me. Sometimes about nothing at all. It was the first time in years I let silence exist without anxiety. Eric called, over and over, first with outrage, then with desperation. His voicemails shifted in tone like the spinning of a roulette wheel, one moment cursing, the next begging me to come home. "We can fix this," he said. "Just tell me what to do." But he never once said I was wrong, and that told me everything. Margaret texted too. Long, suffocating messages about wives knowing their place and how marriage is about sacrifice. I deleted them without reading past the first line. On the 4th morning, I finally went home. Not to stay, just to gather my things. The apartment was spotless, as if nothing had ever happened. No broken glass, no overturned chairs. The white rose Andrew gave me had been placed in a slender vase on the dining table. I didn't know if it was Eric or the cleaner or Margaret. It didn't matter. I walked straight to the bedroom and began packing. Eric was there, sitting on the edge of the bed, unshaven, eyes dark and hollow. He didn't yell this time. "I don't get it," he said. "After everything we've built, you're really throwing it away." I kept folding my sweaters. What exactly did we build, Eric? A life, a family, a name. I turned to face him. You built a reputation. I built a home. I built a company, even if my name was never on the letterhead. But you built yourself a throne and made me kneel beside it. He rubbed his face. Is this about Andrew? About that stupid brooch? This is about me, I said softly. About the woman I used to be. The one who had dreams. The one you said was too much and slowly chipped away until all that was left was silence. He stood frustrated. What do you want from me? Money? A public apology? I want my life back. He laughed bitterly. You think you can do better on your own? You're 40, Elaine. I'm 40, I said, my voice steady, not dead. And I'd rather start from zero than stay one more day in a life where I'm invisible. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he never had. When I zipped the last suitcase, I walked over to the vase and gently lifted the white rose. Its petals had begun to wilt, edges curling inward. Still, it held beauty, fragility, and strength all at once. As I stepped into the hallway, suitcase in one hand and rose in the other, Eric called out. "You're going to regret this." I didn't answer. Not because I was unsure, but because I finally knew what I was doing, and that made all the difference. 2 weeks passed like a quiet storm. I found a small studio apartment in Cambridge, just across the river from everything I used to call home. It was nothing like our Beacon Hill condo, but it was mine. White walls, wide windows, sunlight on the hardwood floors. I furnished it with care, only what I needed. No luxury, no noise, no performance. I pressed the rose Andrew had given me between the pages of an old poetry book. It dried there like memory preserved, delicate and honest. Ethan came to visit on a Saturday. He stepped into the apartment, glanced around, and hugged me so tightly it hurt. "Mom," he whispered, "you look different. Better or worse?" "Lighter." We sat on my pull-out sofa, drinking coffee with cinnamon, just like Monica made it. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need them. After a while, he looked at me and said, "You know, I used to hear you laughing a lot when I was little. Somewhere along the way, that stopped." I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. "I'm glad you left," he said, "even if I wish it didn't have to happen that way." I smiled. Me too. Eric still called. His messages had mellowed, less anger, more confusion. He didn't understand how I could just leave, as if my departure was sudden, as if it hadn't been building for years in every silence, every dismissal, every eye roll. Margaret tried to shame me through voicemails. I deleted them all. Work was harder. No references. No job history on paper. I went to interviews where I had to explain why my experience wasn't neatly typed on a resume. Most hiring managers smiled politely, but their eyes skimmed right past me. 40, female, formerly married to a CEO. It made people uncomfortable. Until Andrew called. "Coffee?" he asked, just like before. Only this time, I said yes without hesitation. We met at a small cafe near the river. He looked tired but content. When I walked in, he stood up with that same quiet smile. "You're wearing the brooch," he noted. "I am." He handed me a folder. "I want you to look at this. It's a 5-year plan for our U.S. expansion. We're looking for a regional financial director. I need someone who understands people and money. Someone who's already done this work, even if it wasn't on the books." I opened the folder. Numbers, charts, logistics. It all spoke to me, like a language I hadn't used in years, but still knew by heart. "You're offering me a job?" I asked, stunned. "No," he said. "I'm offering you an opportunity. The decision is yours. If you take it, we build it together. If not, we still finish this coffee and walk away friends." I studied him. There was no agenda in his voice, no manipulation, just space for me to choose. And for once, I didn't feel afraid. I closed the folder and smiled. "I'll need a few days. But yes, I want to try." "Good," he said. "I was hoping you'd say that." We finished our coffee by the window. The city pulsed quietly around us. Cars passing, trees shedding golden leaves, people going about their lives. I sat there with a man who once remembered what made me brilliant and offered me a chance to rediscover it. Later that night, in my apartment, I pinned the butterfly brooch back onto my jacket and stood by the window. The world outside didn't know I had changed, but I had. I wasn't a woman trapped in amber anymore. I was a woman in motion. And for the first time in decades, I was finally flying forward on my own wings.